If you're in the market for investment-worthy bags, watches, and fine jewelry, Rebag is the answer. Rebag is a luxury resale marketplace where each piece is carefully vetted and verified by experts to ensure quality and authenticity. If you're in the market, use Rebag to buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermes, Chanel, and Cartier. Head to Rebag.com to get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. Shop today at Rebag.com. That's REBAG.com and use promo code REBAG10 for 10% off your first purchase.
Welcome in here to the 10 of 12 podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gilbert. Today here on the show, we are going to be recapping the first weekend of college football in the Big 12 Conference. It was ugly for a couple of teams in the Big 12. 0-3 was the Big 12's record against Sun Belt opponents. Overall, though, not the best week for Big 12 football. You've got winners Oklahoma, West Virginia, Texas Tech, and Texas. You got losers, of course, K-State, KU, and Iowa State. And then you've got Baylor, Oklahoma State, and TCU, who did not partake in technically week 2 of the college football season, but let's be real here, it's week 1 in the Big 12 Conference. Next week, Houston will play up against Baylor, and Tulsa will play Oklahoma State. So there will be 2 games next weekend for us here in the Big 12 Conference. But like I said here, this is the 10 of 12 podcast. My name is Ryan Gilbert. For those of you who don't know who I am or even what this is, I'm a student here at Kansas State University. I'm a senior now. Boy, I feel really old saying that, but I've done this podcast here for about a year and a half now. If you've listened before, welcome back. I appreciate your continued listenership throughout the years. You know what this is. It's basically just talking about each of the 10 teams in the Big 12 Conference. Okay, we don't get super in-depth. We don't necessarily go into the schematics, the crazy. I'm not going to come on here and spit hot takes. That's not what this is, okay? This podcast here is for you to stay up to date around the Big 12 Conference, okay? There's 10 teams. You've probably got a favorite team in there. You don't have time to follow all the 9 other teams, so this is what this podcast is for. Stay up to date with everything going on around the Big 12. The latest updates, news, predictions, highlights, scores. It's all here on the 10 of 12 podcast. Real quick here, follow us on Twitter at 10 of 12 podcast. Been kind of dead on that account lately, but now that we've got sports back, I think we'll finally get that that Twitter account up and running again, as we've got some live football. It's been a weird season, but we finally have some pigskin being thrown around the field, so it feels good. It feels good to have some sports back, and there's no doubt about that. If this is your first time listening, though, there's a chance you're from Go Powercat. For those who don't know, I picked up a job there at GoPowercat.com back in about March or April, right when the pandemic sort of started. I've been doing some podcasting, some recruiting, as well as just some articles for the website. If you don't know what Go Powercat is, it's basically the 24/7 affiliate for Kansas State. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but you know what it is. It's the K-State site for 24/7 sports. Go check it out if you're not doing so already. There's deals going up all the time on the website. If you're not a subscriber over there, I would encourage you to do so. So this podcast will also be posted over there, as well as, of course, on the Twitter at 10 of 12 podcast. Stay up to date everywhere around the Big 12. So that's kind of what this is here. Like I said, I am a K-State student here. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a K-State fan. So I can't say that we're not going to talk about K-State less than another school. Okay, I'll be honest. I think we'll talk about K-State more than any other school on this podcast, but we touch on each of the 10 teams. Okay, it's not just a K-State podcast. You know, when I started this podcast, I didn't want it to just be about K-State. I didn't want it to be one of those podcasts. Okay, today we're going to talk about the NBA. Tomorrow we'll talk about the Chiefs. The next day we'll talk about the Royals. The next day we'll talk about K-State. I didn't want it to be all over the place. I wanted to keep a nice, simple theme to it. So I think the Big 12 theme really works, just because I've been, a fan of the league pretty much, throughout my entire life. So that's kind of why I started this podcast. So welcome. If you've been listening for years, then I appreciate you sticking with me. If this is your first time, I hope it's not your last. Whether you're listening through the normal feed, whether you're listening through Go Powercat, thank you so much for spending part of your day listening here to this episode of the 10 of 12 podcast. But like I said, K-State, Iowa State, KU, all losers in the first weekend. You've got Texas, Texas Tech, West Virginia, and Oklahoma victorious. And then you've got Oklahoma State, Baylor, and TCU not partaking in week number 1 or week number 2, whatever you want to call it. So obviously some frustrating games if you're a Wildcat, Jayhawk, or Cyclone fan. And we'll start it off with that Kansas State game. But before we do, we'll go down the line here. Oklahoma 48-0 over Missouri State, a big-time win for the Sooners. Texas beats up on UTEP 59-3, another one of those blowout games. Then you've got Iowa State losing to Louisiana 31-14. We'll get into that one here in a bit. West Virginia beats up on Eastern Kentucky 56-10 out there in Morgantown. Right here in Manhattan, though, Arkansas State is able to get an upset win over K-State 35-31. You've got Houston Baptist losing to Texas Tech only by a couple points. 35-33 was the final in Lubbock. And last, honestly but least, you've got Coastal Carolina beating KU 38-23 out there in Lawrence. But we'll start it off here in Manhattan with that K-State Arkansas State game. I mean, if you're a K-State fan, you've got every right to be upset with this football game. It was not pretty. It was not good. There was basically There was nothing positive to take away from this game. I think the one thing that you look at and you can say that was good was Deuce Vaughn's running back abilities for Kansas State. He ran the ball well. He's only a freshman. I think the future does look bright for Deuce Vaughn in purple here in Manhattan for the next 4 years, hopefully, if you're a Wildcat fan. But other than that, it was atrocious, okay? And I know a lot of people want to blame Skylar Thompson, okay? And I'll be the first one to blame him. If you don't know me, or if you don't know me well enough, I'm not a Skylar Thompson fan. I'm really not. And if you've listened to some of the stuff on Go Powercat, I try to hold back. I don't want to be that guy to just come on the podcast and spit hot takes and be angry and be mad at this guy, that guy did something wrong. That's not who I want to be. But I've never been a fan of Skylar Thompson, and I think we saw that this past weekend against Arkansas State. It was funny. I was watching with one of our roommates, and he was like, "Oh, Skylar's great. He's going to have a great year." And I was like, "I don't think it's going to happen, man. I would love for that to happen, but I don't see it." But Eddie, after the game was over, I went up to him. I was like, "Eddie, I think you owe me an apology there because Skylar played one of his worst games as a Wildcat. He's played some bad games in his past, but this was not pretty for him. He missed a couple big throws. There were some miscommunications with his wide receivers. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me with Skylar Thompson, and this is not his fault. This loss is not his fault. Kansas State played awful. There's no question about that. But I think the biggest thing for Skylar Thompson that I saw on the field was his body language. And he did not have the body language of a leader there against Arkansas State, okay? I think it was Malik Knowles over on the right sideline. He overthrows him by a mile. He's looking at Malik Knowles. He's saying, "Hey, that's your fault. You got to be in the right spot." When in reality, you got to be a leader. Even if it was Malik Knowles' fault, you've got to say, "Hey, we'll get the next play. It's all right. Get your head up. I'll get my head up," you know? That's not how a leader doesn't point fingers. And I saw Skylar Thompson pointing his finger, shrugging his shoulders, head down a couple times there in Manhattan. That's not what a leader does on or off the field. You know, you talk about lead by example. I think Skylar Thompson really needs to make a couple steps forward in this off week before they play up against Oklahoma to open up conference play. That's not going to be a fun game if you're a K-State fan. It's just not. You can try to make some optimism for it. You can try to say, "Hey, we've got this going for us. We've got that going for us." It's not going to be a good game. Oklahoma looked really good. We'll talk about them here later, but the main point here, I don't want to bash on Skylar Thompson because this loss is not his fault. As much as I dislike his abilities at quarterback, this loss was on everyone for K-State, including the coaching staff. Okay, you've got Blake Lynch, who misses a couple field goals. Like I said, K-State loses this game 35-31. If he hits his field goals, they win this game, theoretically speaking, you know? If the special teams hits their field goals, they win. Okay, but this game shouldn't have even been close. I mean, the offensive line goes without saying. They're very depleted. They're not going to be good this year. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. The offensive line for K-State is toast. This is going to be a long season for Skylar Thompson, okay? It'll be a long season because that's his Achilles heel. Skylar Thompson, if he senses any sort of pressure, what does he do? He goes out and rolls towards his right, throws the ball out of bounds, lives to see another down. I guess he didn't turn it over. Whatever. That's what Skylar Thompson does. And this offensive line is not going to help that at all. So it's going to be a long season for K-State. I'll put it bluntly. You know, if you listen to, the Questions podcast that I'm on at Go Powercat, you probably haven't really heard me get too angry. I don't want to do it on there, but here it's like, I feel very passionately about this K-State team. Last year I was never on board with them, even after they beat Oklahoma. I was never on board because maybe it was just my memory. I was in Stillwater for that game against Oklahoma State where they crapped the bed. I was in Manhattan for that game against Baylor. Not pretty games. I mean, they stuck into my memory, okay? I think K-State can win some games this year, but after week one, it is clear. It is obvious. I know they're depleted. I know they didn't have a lot of players. K-State's not going to be that good this year. And this season's, honestly, it's just going to be a wash. Even whoever wins the championship, the trophy, the playoff, whatever it's called, even whoever is determined champion, there's going to be an asterisk by your name for the rest of the time because this was such a weird year. In the Big 12, there's no way you're playing 10 games. There's no way. We already saw it with Oklahoma State, TCU, and Baylor. Okay? They're not playing 10 games. I mean, they might because they've got rematches, at least Baylor and Oklahoma State do, but there's no way you're playing 10 games. It's not going to happen. There's going to be too many cases on a team. I don't think the season's going to get shut down. I think there will be a full season. I think for a majority of Big 12 teams, you can't be banking on playing 10 games. It's not going to happen. There's going to be too many positive tests, I guess I should say. So back to the game here. I get off track here as you will learn that. You'll learn that I get off track a lot. But back to the game here. It should not have even been a game. Okay, you look at K-State's first drive. It was a 2-play touchdown pass from Skylar Thompson. K-State blocks a punt. They get set up in the red zone. So, the offense did nothing for that. Absolutely nothing. Skylar made a good throw for a touchdown, sure. But if you take that away, that blocked punt, K-State's not scoring on that drive. I wholeheartedly believe that. I could be wrong because you never know. But if you take away that blocked punt, that's 7 points off the board, okay? Let's go back. And when Arkansas State was in the red zone, they have on the exchange with the handoff, fumbles it on the ground, and K-State recovers. I mean, they were marching down the field. That's at least 3 points. Probably 7. But at least 3 points, okay? That's at least 10 points, probably 14 points that could have swung Arkansas State's way. That didn't. So this easily, and I am not being a lunatic and saying this could have easily been a 3-score game. Easily. K-State did not even deserve to have a chance in this game. If these teams play 10 times, K-State's got a chance to win 2 or 3. If they play the way they played, okay? If they play better, if they play mentally, physically prepared, they've got a better chance to win this game. But if they play like that, you're fortunate to even have a chance to win that game. It was ugly on all aspects. You give up 35 points. That's terrible, okay? At least the offense scored 31 points, okay? I know you can point fingers all you want. You scored 31 points. I know the Big 12's tough. 31 points isn't always going to get you a win. But against a Sun Belt school, 31 points should give you a win. Not always, but it should. And that's where you're frustrated if you're a K-State fan. You should have won this game. Because you're K-State. And I know I'm kind of all over the place here. You're K-State. You're a better program than Arkansas State. And we haven't even talked about Adams. Probably the best wide receiver. That's not even a question. The best wide receiver in the game. Easily. Youngblood wasn't playing. You've got Malik Knowles who didn't do much. I mean, Alexander was just bullying A.J. Parker. It was an embarrassment for Kansas State. You've got to be better than that if you're the defense overall. Wyatt Hubert didn't do much. I know he had a couple sacks or a tackle, whatever. He had his selfie celebration. He was fine. The defensive line is what's going to have to carry this K-State team throughout the season because Skylar clearly he showed us that he's not prepared for this season. He's not. He just lost to Arkansas State. He's a senior quarterback in the Big 12. You lose to Arkansas State, that's a problem. I don't think you're going to be that good this year, buddy. I don't think so. Prove me wrong. I would love you to prove me wrong, but it'll be a long season for the Kansas State Wildcats. I could go on and on. Like, literally, I could just rant about this game for hours, and I know I kind of said earlier, I'm not going to come here and scream into the microphone and rant and spit hot takes. Okay, that's not what this is. That's not who I am. But you need to hear it that K-State's not going to be good this year. They can win some games, sure. But that loss to Arkansas State tells you everything you need to know about this team. It's going to be a long season. I mean, think about how you're going to go up against Oklahoma next week. I guess 2 weeks from now. How are you going to play Oklahoma when you're playing like that? Skylar Thompson, there's talks about him being injured. Okay, Skylar, if you're injured, get out of the game. Let Will Howard go in and throw the passes. If you're so hurt, which is, if Skylar's hurt, that's fine. But if he's hurt to the point where he can't play, he needs to be a leader and say, yeah, I'm not 100%. I need to get out of this game and let someone who is 100% play. Because Howard looked pretty good for the little time we saw of him. He looked good. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. Overall, though, a frustrating loss for Kansas State, 35-31. I think we'll finally move on as I've been talking about that one for a bit too long here. Next game we'll get into is Louisiana at Iowa State. 31-14 was the score in Ames, Iowa. I mean, just what a terrible look for the Big 12, not only with Iowa State, but with Kansas State and, as expected, Kansas as well. I mean, this game was 31-14. I get it wasn't that close of a game. A 17-point loss is not good inside of Jack Trice Stadium. I think it was kind of the tail of these two games were very similar for Kansas State and Iowa State. Just lack of preparation, I know it's cliche to say, but when you don't have that quote-unquote exhibition game or that practice game to get the rust off of you, that hurts. That hurts a lot. That is killer for these teams. Louisiana, this was their first game, though. So you can't necessarily say that about Iowa State. You could certainly make up an excuse for Kansas State for not being prepared, even though that's entirely their fault. But, Iowa State, there's not much of an excuse for this game. It's, I guess, a quote-unquote level playing field because it was both their first game. But you lose it by 17. I don't necessarily think it's fair to say they got blown out because if you look at this game, a very poor offensive football game. No doubt about that. Iowa State, they had a chance. I mean, they were up at halftime, 14-10. So this was not a blowout like you're seeing. They got shut out in the second half, sure, but they were in it up until the final minutes of this game. So, a tough loss for Iowa State. And I hate to say it on here, I really do, but Matt Campbell is not a good coach, and I really wish I would have done a podcast last week previewing all these games because I was going to say this exact same thing pretty much regardless of whether or how Iowa State won or lost this game, okay? Iowa State's overrated. They're not going to be good this year. They're fortunate there's not 12 games being played this year, so they can't go 7-5 again. I guess that's a positive for Iowa State, but they're not good. Matt Campbell's not good. I just don't understand. Texas, I understand. That's a big name, a big market. Oklahoma, that's a big name. I understand. I understand where some of these teams, why they get overrated. I don't understand why Iowa State gets so much praise every year. They're not good. Brock Purdy's mediocre at best. I just don't get it. Every year, Iowa State, it's, I guess not every year, but recently people are saying, how's Iowa State's going to be good this year? No. Iowa State's not going to – they're pretty much like K-State. They lose to a Sun Belt school just like the Wildcats. I mean, the games are a little different, but grand scheme of things, it's an embarrassing look for the league. So overall, not a good look for the Cyclones, not a good look for the Wildcats. We'll talk about KU Coastal Carolina here. 38-23 is the score. And it's just, what are you doing if you're Kansas? What are you doing? You lose it by 15 points, and here's the thing. With that Iowa State game, that was kind of a close game. To say that this was a 15-point game in Lawrence is just ridiculous. That was a 30 or 40-point game. Coastal Carolina was blowing them out. No contest. It was over before it started, really, in Lawrence. It was a 28-3 game at halftime. I think KU got a last-second field goal heading into the break to get a massive 3 points on the board. It's just, I saw a lot of KU fans and even reporters. I know it's their job to kind of like create optimism around the team. I get that. I really do. But there were a lot of fans that really were just excited and optimistic about this season, and then they do that. And I know I have no room to talk because K-State just went out and crapped the bed against Arkansas State, but still, it's not happening for Kansas, okay? I tend to be a pessimist, honestly, more than an optimist with a lot of these teams. Like, K-State not going to be good. Iowa State not going to be good. KU certainly not going to be good, okay? If you're a KU fan watching this game, you're kind of getting that reminiscent feeling, if you're a K-State fan, rather, I should say, with McVitie and Kendrick at quarterback. I know Kendrick got a majority of the workload, but reminds you a lot of what happened with Skylar Thompson and Alex Delton, 3 or 4 years ago here in Manhattan, where they didn't necessarily have a quarterback. They're still struggling. Carter Stanley's gone. Like I said, Kendrick got a majority of the workload, but they were still trying to get McVitie in there, and that's just not how you play football. You need one quarterback. I'm never, ever, ever a fan of bringing two quarterbacks into a football game. Never. Unless there's an injury, something happens, sure. But it's, you've got to have one quarterback. If you don't have two, you don't have one. If you don't have two, you do not have one. You just don't. What do you think if you're a quarterback and you're about to go into a game and you don't even know if you're going to play? Am I going to be the starter? Am I going to get the second, possession? Are we going to switch off possessions? How's this going to work? Mentally, physically, how do you prepare for that? I'm not a fan of it. Les Miles got to clean that up. But overall, KU's got to clean up that game for sure. They outscored Coastal Carolina 20-10 in half number 2. But this game, like I said, it was over before it started, straight up. So KU's not going to be good this year. There's absolutely no debating that. I think you can make a case for Iowa State. You can make a case for Kansas State. I could be wrong. They could prove me totally wrong. But KU's not going to have virtually any success in this league. And I know if you're a KU fan and you've listened to this podcast for a while, you'll know that I'm pretty neutral with these things, okay? I'll be quick to call out K-State. I'll be quick to call out Kansas as well. Go back to Iowa State, K-State last year. It was the Thanksgiving break game, freezing cold. I wasn't in Manhattan, so I wasn't there to experience it, but apparently it was really cold. And later that season, K-State gets the worst bowl game than Iowa State got. I think it was the Camping World Bowl. K-State was stuck in the Liberty Bowl. I could be totally wrong on that. Don't fact check me, but K-State fans weren't happy, bottom line. They weren't happy. They said, hey, our fans are better than Iowa State fans. Really? I mean, Iowa State fans are pretty loyal, pretty passionate. Go to the Sprint Center, okay? Of course there's going to be K-State, KU fans there. T-Mobile Center, because it's not the Sprint Center anymore, even though in my heart forever it will be the Sprint Center. The T-Mobile Center, go there if there's fans next time they're playing. I mean, it's flooded with Iowa State fans. It's flooded with Iowa State fans. But the reason I bring this up is that, K-State was playing against Iowa State last season in Bill Snyder Family Stadium, and there was nobody there. There was probably 5,000 fans there by the end of the game. There was no one there. And apparently it was super cold, right? And I get that. If you're too cold, go home. That's fine. But you can't sit here and tell me that your fans are better than Iowa State fans when you guys go home because it's cold at a game. Who cares how cold it is? You don't have the best fans in the Big 12, okay? You don't. Now, I agree that with K-State that they were the better team last year than Iowa State. They beat Iowa State, had a better record than them overall, okay? I totally agree with you on that. But as far as fans go, you really can't be screaming if you're a K-State fan. I mean, look, I tweeted that on the podcast a while ago. We remember the K-State KU brawl that we had a few seasons back in Allen Fieldhouse. I was quick to call it Antonio Gordon, as well as James Love. I told him to get off the team. There's no place for that on a basketball team. Same thing goes for Silvio De Sousa and David McCormick, I believe, were the two for Kansas. Get off the team. There's no room for that in the NCAA. College basketball, the Big 12, KU, K-State, doesn't matter. There's no room for that on the hardwood. So I'll be quick to say it like it is. So I guess I'm kind of contradicting myself, how I earlier said this is not going to be somewhere where I get angry and yell. Here I am angry yelling, okay? There will be times where I'll stick up for a certain team, where I'll tell the truth, what I really think, because K-State fans, I argue with my roommate, like I said, all the time about K-State because he's a diehard fan. I consider myself a little more real with some things. I grew up a K-State fan my entire life. I've always hated Kansas. I blame my dad on that because he just hates Kansas, so it kind of just rubbed off on me. But since starting this podcast a year and a half ago, I don't hate Kansas anymore. I really don't. Do I want K-State to beat KU? Of course I do. There's no question about that. But they're 90 miles away. Go down I-70. Lawrence is no different than Manhattan. Seriously, there's no difference between those two towns. There's not. They're little college towns. Okay, politically, they might be a little different, sure. But other than that, I mean, there's just virtually no difference, okay? They're not even 100 miles apart. So it drives me insane with the amount of hatred that we have, for these games. My roommate, I keep talking about him. After the game on Saturday, he was like, I'm mad. he started doing his homework on a Saturday. It was like 3 o'clock. He's like, I got to go do homework. I'm so angry about this game on a Saturday. That tells you how angry some people can get at sports. But KU, a frustrating loss for them, no doubt about it. K-State, Iowa State as well. We'll take a quick break here on the 10 to 12 podcast. Be right back here in a second after a quick break.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome back in here to the 10 of 12 podcast. I am Ryan Gilbert, talking Big 12. Technically week number 1, but it's week 2 in the college football season. We're recapping everything here, as well as getting into a couple previews coming up in week number 2, week number 3, whatever the hell it is. I don't know. This is way out of my pay grade. The next weekend in the Big 12, we'll be talking about Oklahoma State against Tulsa, as well as Houston and Baylor. But before we do here, quick shout out to the Twitter account at 10 of 12 podcast. Be sure to stay up to date with everything going on around the Big 12 Conference. Next game we will get into here on the podcast is Oklahoma and Missouri State. Okay, Oklahoma, they're a good team. They're the best team in the Big 12. Okay, I think coming into the season here, I think Oklahoma State gave me a lot of reasons And I mean a lot of reasons. We'll get to them in a minute here with their preview. A lot of reasons to believe they could be the best team in the league. But after that game on Saturday, I think Oklahoma's got this thing in the bag another year. It's hard. It's like KU in basketball. It's very hard, to bet against that team. There's always reason for skepticism. There's always reason to say this is Texas's year. Basketball, you look at this is West Virginia's year. This is Oklahoma. Trae Young's coming in. There's always something. But at the end of the day, I think Oklahoma is just the safest bet you've got to win the Big 12. They were up 31-0 after the first quarter. It's not going to be a fun, however many years Spencer Rattler's in the Big 12. It's not going to be fun around the league unless you're a Sooner fan. It's just not. 48-0, the final in Norman. Missouri State's not a good team. Okay, that's the thing. Arkansas State's a good team. Louisiana, they're a good team as well. Some of these opponents these teams played were good. Arkansas State is not a bad team. Some of them are bad. Missouri State's a bad team. So I'm not trying to say that Oklahoma, this was, what a marquee win for, not at all. Missouri State, I believe, was like 1-9, 1-10, 1-11 last year. They won one game, and it was in overtime. So that's not a good team. But, the way they did it, it was like they were playing, Oklahoma's high school, varsity against Missouri State's the JV team. It was just like, it was quite the blowout. And quite honestly, there's not a lot to say about this game. And that's another thing here. I'm not going to try to milk out as much as I can about a game. When there's a blowout, it's a blowout. There's not much to say about this Oklahoma game. They're going to be good. I think they're the front runner now in the Big 12. Oklahoma State, we'll get to them here with the preview, but that's a team that I think has a chance to do something. But a nice little segue in here to a team that does not have a chance to do it is Texas. And Texas wins 59-3. Again, another impressive win over UTEP, which is really not that good of a team, but still, Texas gets it done. Sam Ehlinger, I'll give them credit. I'll give Ehlinger credit. We'll get to West Virginia here credit. I give Texas Tech, even though they really weren't that pretty. They got the wins. They were prepared. Sam Ehlinger led his team because he's a senior quarterback, which is something Skylar Thompson couldn't do. He led his team to a win. So it's pretty clear that Texas is not a bad team. I'm not trying to say Texas is bad, but I said this last year. It's every year. Texas is overrated. Doesn't matter what sport it is either. Basketball, same thing. Texas is overrated. They're not going to be that good this year. There's going to be reason to believe that they're going to be good because we go back to last year, okay? That game against LSU down there in Austin, that's a game Texas should have won. Straight up, Texas should have beaten LSU in Austin last season. And I think we all remember how good LSU was. That's a pretty darn good team. Texas wasn't terrible last year. It's just they really regressed, and I know they were really banged up and injured. I do know that. But they really took a step back after those first couple weeks of the season. Texas is overrated, though. Tom Herman's just not – I just don't understand why. I understand why. There's a big following. There's the media, the name on the front of the jersey. There's a lot of reasons to pick Texas to go and place first or second in the Big 12 year after year, and they go and finish fourth or fifth. I think Texas will be a top half team, no doubt about that, but they're definitely overrated. It happens every year. They get a big time win against UTEP. There's plenty of football left to be played. But the big story here, I guess not the big story, but something I like to throw in here when there is nothing to necessarily talk about with these games. Okay, Texas, a safety by the name of B.J. Foster left the game in the third quarter, and allegedly he's gone. He's off the team. He basically quit in the middle of the game. I don't know much about him. I know back in June, I believe he punched a car and broke his wrist. I could be wrong. Again, don't fact check me on this. But he's had his off-the-field issues, okay? He's had his issues. I'm not trying to fault him. I'm not trying to say he's a bad guy. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying he's had some issues in the past. So literally the third quarter of this game, he's a junior, just says, hey, I'm off the team. He just literally is calling quits on the season. So who knows what's happening? We'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll be keeping our palms on that situation. But it's just it's something weird here. We like to throw in little tidbits of information, that you probably didn't hear because that's not breaking news. You're not going to see that on SportsCenter. You're not going to see that, during the break during the game you're watching where they go away for 10 seconds and talk about the other game. You're not going to necessarily see those things, but I think it's important to note here on the podcast. Other than that, though, Texas, not much going on in that game. 59-3, as well as the OU game 48-0. And I can't believe someone would pay, what was it, $50 to watch that game, that OU game on pay-per-view? I mean, after halftime, you're like, do I really have to turn this TV back on? You know, we're winning 41-0. Why do I even need to tune back into this game? It's over. It's done. Oh, well, Oklahoma fans, if you bought it, I respect it. That's some pure dedication to your football team. Next game, I should say, we'll get into here. West Virginia against Eastern Kentucky, 56-10. West Virginia picks up the W against Eastern Kentucky out there in Morgantown. Second loss of the season for EKU. West Virginia, though, a good win. And this is the one team here that I think has a good chance to do something special here in the Big 12. Not to win the league, not to do anything like that. But if there is a team to catch OU sleeping, to catch Oklahoma State sleeping, I think it's West Virginia, okay? I saw this team play in person last year in Manhattan, and I got to see Daggy. And Daggy's good, okay? I'm a fan of him. I liked him. Right, the first quarter I was like, okay, this is going to be a star in the Big 12. Not a superstar, but he's going to get that level of respect that Skylar Thompson somehow has, that Ellinger has, that Purdy has, Charlie Brewer, all these guys. He's going to get that level of respect. No, Kendall was terrible last year. He wasn't terrible, but he was not a Big 12 quarterback for West Virginia. Daggy's got it. I'm a fan of this team. They beat up on Eastern Kentucky. They win it by 36 points in this game. I guess 46 points, I should say. It's a good win for West Virginia. One thing here to note with this team, we've got all these COVID instances. We've got players opting out. Something we didn't necessarily touch on a ton with Kansas State was, everyone was opting out, or not opting out. Jonathan Alexander's opting out, but there's injuries, there's Rona, there's everything going on. Same thing with Arkansas State. That was not talked about really at all, is that Arkansas State didn't have a good amount of players on their team as well. I didn't even know that till after the game. I was like, what? So Arkansas, they played a great game, but that's not the point here. This has nothing to do with COVID, with opting out, none of that stuff. 11 players suspended for West Virginia coming into the game. It's a one-game suspension. They're all good. A couple starters, but a majority of them, of course, going by the numbers, that's how it adds up. A majority of the players were backups, but a couple starters were not there for West Virginia this game. You throw that in with everything else going on, I think that's pretty an impressive win for the Mountaineers. Okay, you don't have, a majority of your players, I guess not a majority, but you got a good chunk that's not even playing. You still win it by 46. I'm impressed with West Virginia. I like what they can do this year. That's my sleeper pick. No doubt about it in the Big 12 Conference. No doubt West Virginia is the team to watch for this season. Other than that, though, nothing else really to talk about within that game. Here we are, last game, though, Texas Tech and Houston Baptist. This one was just, Houston Baptist, man. You only beat them by 2 points in Lubbock. Texas Tech was kind of in control for this game for the most part. They let it really slip away, but boy, the offense, the offense reminds you of Patrick Mahomes, Kingsbury down there in Lubbock, but the defense, you've got to be better than that. I think it was over 1,000 total yards in this game combined for both teams. Sure, that's Big 12 football, but you can't be winning a lot of games when your defense is doing that against Houston Baptist, okay? Against OU, you want to get in a shootout, fine. You got a chance to win that game. That's probably your best bet, just to get in a shootout with that team. Houston Baptist, though, I don't think that's a team that you necessarily should be in that type of game with, okay? I'll pull up the box score here. I don't know the exact number, though, but they were lighting it up on the offensive side of the football, were the Huskies. And this, quite honestly, Houston Baptist is one of those teams where it's like, I've barely ever heard of that team. Barely. So, overall, not a great game for Texas Tech, but at the end of the day, they still won the game. They got it done. Something that K-State, Iowa State, KU, something that they can't say. So, overall, I guess you're happy they gave up 600 yards. I just pulled it up here. 600 yards to Houston Baptist. Houston Baptist gave up 624 yards. That's over 1,200 yards. What in the world? It's not like it went to overtime or anything. Like, goodness. So over 1,200 yards, and you only put up, goodness, I'm not good at math. Is that 68 points that you put up combined? That's not a good ratio. Okay, I don't know what a good ratio for that would be, but if you put up 1,200 yards, I think you should get a little bit more than 35, 33 points each. But overall, I guess you can kind of give them credit. Texas Tech necessarily, they kind of controlled the game, the tempo. They need to be better. There's no doubt about that. But they got the win done. That's all that there is for that game. Okay, now we've got a couple games here coming up in week 2, week 3, whatever it is, here in the Big 12. Houston playing up here against Baylor. Not a bad team. Houston's not a bad team. They play, not in the worst conference either, so there's definitely some competition that they're used to going up against. And we haven't necessarily talked about Baylor, though, at all here yet on the show. I am not a fan, personally, I'm not a fan of the hire for him to go to the NFL. Okay, I would have at least given that one more year if I were to hire Matt Rule to come coach my NFL team. That's just me. That's just my personal opinion. Baylor was not that good last year, and I don't want to be rude in saying that. I'm not trying to start controversy. Baylor wasn't that good. They won most of their games were just very close, so they could have been like a 7-5 team very easily. And I know that good teams find ways to win games. I get that. I totally 100% agree. Baylor won their games. Give them credit. They played Georgia in a bowl game. They lost, but still, it was a good game. You can't. Baylor, I don't see much from them this year. I don't think they were good last year. They were good, and I wouldn't even say they were overrated because it's like there wasn't much hype. There wasn't much excitement around that team. They were highly ranked because of their record, and that's about it. Okay. Oklahoma's going to be highly ranked no matter what, so there's potential for that team, to be overrated. But even though I think they're good, with Baylor, that right there is a team that is going to struggle this year. They're losing, Matt Rule. Like I said earlier, I think Rule should not be in the NFL. I think if you got to give him one more year. What was it, 3 years ago, where that Baylor program had like 1 win or 3 wins, whatever the number was? So that's a quick turnaround, and that's very impressive if you're Matt Rule. I'm not trying to take away from that. He's a good coach. I think he's a good guy, too. He's fine, okay? He likes to lick his lips on the sidelines and, his outfits and whatever. That's fine. He's a good coach. I'm not trying to say he's not. I just don't think he's an NFL coach. If he's back at Baylor again this season, he's going to go 7-5. 8-4, or I guess they're not going to play 12 games. He's going to win 60-70% of his games. There's no way they're going to push up towards, making the college football playoff again. There's no way they can do that. Even if Matt Rule was here or not, I get it. Good teams find ways to win games. The rebuild he did there at Baylor was incredible. It was honestly incredible. But it's a little different in the NFL when you're not trying to necessarily rebuild programs. It's not like you're recruiting these guys in. You're just drafting them and coaching them. NFL's a lot more about the schematics of football rather than the recruitment, the process of gathering these players towards your team, okay? So that's all I have to say about Baylor. I expect them to beat Houston, but overall, not going to be the best season in my eyes for Baylor, okay? It could be, but I'm not a fan of this Baylor team here in 2020. Next team we'll get into here, Oklahoma State. They're playing Tulsa here next weekend in the Big 12 Conference. So Oklahoma State, they've got, I think, the most firepower in the Big 12. You've got a returning quarterback who was banged up last year, didn't play much, in Spencer Sanders. You've got Heisman finalist, bank it right now, Chuba Hubbard. You've got Tylan Wallace. You've got a big three right there. I mean, you look at an NFL team like the Chiefs. They've got Mahomes, they've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then they've got Tyreek Hill, and then you've got Kelsey. That's 4. All you need is 3: a QB, a running back, and a wide receiver, and some fun things can happen on your team. Oklahoma State's got that. Wallace, Spencer Sanders, as well as Chuba Hubbard. They've got some potential to do some things. Mike Gundy's a good coach. I know he had some negative press over the offseason for some of his political stances, for some of his COVID takes, whatever it was. I think his team's bought back in. Now I think Chuba Hubbard last week came out and said, yeah, this was a good offseason. We got stuff done, after saying he was not going to stand for it, and he said he wanted to transfer, whatever. I don't remember the full situation there. They're back. They're bought in. They want to win games. Mike Gundy, that's just who he is. I think Oklahoma State's got some potential. If there is a team to knock down Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma and Oklahoma State will meet in the title game. But I think Oklahoma State's going to be the loser in that game. But still, Oklahoma's got a chance. Pardon me, Oklahoma State's got a chance. If they can stay healthy. Excuse me. We never got to see what that team could really do last season. We didn't get to see it. they were banged up. If they're healthy, we'll see what happens this season. I'm excited to watch that Oklahoma State team in the Big 12. Last team we've got here, TCU, the Horned Frogs. Max Duggan looks like he won't be a go for this year. That's a big blow for the Horned Frogs. I think they're going to take a step back. It was looking towards a step forward. You got Duggan with his medical condition. He's going to be out for probably the year. I mean, just terrible, heartbreaking news for TCU. They canceled their first game versus SMU. No makeup date has been set yet, so they might be one of those teams to immediately not get their full slate of games in. I saw that team in Manhattan last year where they played a pretty good game. And K-State won this game. TCU, I remember, had 100 more yards than the Wildcats, though, in that game. So, not a bad team. I like what I saw from them. They're going to be depleted. Jalen Reagor, got him on my fantasy team, so good luck to me. But, he's gone. That's probably their biggest, if not their biggest, playmaker last year. Gone. So you've also got, the Kansas City Chiefs drafted one of their defensive players who I'm absolutely blanking on his name. They're going to be depleted. They're going to be losing some players. There's no doubt about that. Duggan's gone. It's not going to be that pretty of a season for TCU, quite honestly. I'm being very pessimistic about most of these teams in the Big 12, and I hate that I am. I just think there's a lot of skepticism for pretty much every team. I think Oklahoma State, they're going to be really good teams. West Virginia's going to surprise some people. But other than that, though, Iowa State's overrated, Texas overrated, K-State, we saw that they're not going to be that good. KU is going to be garbage no matter what. Texas Tech, we saw that team is really going to struggle. Baylor's going to take a step back, okay? I probably missed a team in there, but overall, not the best year for the Big 12. It's going to be a down year. And I hate the SEC as much as the next guy. We'll have to see what they do when they start playing, but I think it's going to be an ugly bowl game if one of these Big 12 teams goes up against an SEC opponent in a bowl game. But that kind of wraps things up here on the show. Texas Tech, Texas, West Virginia, and Oklahoma victorious in the first weekend of Big 12 football. K-State, KU, Iowa State with some tough losses to the Sun Belt. Oklahoma State, TCU, and Baylor did not play here in the first weekend of football. That kind of wraps things up here on the 10 of 12 podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, whether this was your first time, your 50th time listening, I very much appreciate your listenership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 10 of 12 podcast. I would appreciate that very much. Like I said, stay up to date with everything going on around the Big 12 with the latest updates, predictions, news, highlights, scores. It's all there on Twitter. Excuse me, on Twitter at 10 of 12 podcast. I would appreciate that very much. If you're listening from Go Powercat, you've already got this, but if not, go over there. Even if you're not a K-State fan, 24/7 Sports, OU's got a very good site running there. Texas as well, West Virginia, with Chris Anderson. You got, Colin Kennedy down there at OU. Scott Chasen does a well job over in Lawrence with the KU site. There's a lot of good things going on within the 24/7 Sports network. So be sure to check everyone out. But if you're a K-State fan, I encourage you, sign up for Go Powercat and go ahead and get that done. But other than that, I'm Ryan Gilbert. Thank you so much for spending part of your day listening to this episode of the 10 out of 12 podcast.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.